further ado, they asked a question many years ago, is there a word from the Lord? And I believe the answer is profoundly evident that there is a word from the Lord. Somebody say rebranded. Somebody say it's complicated. Somebody say my worst enemy. These are all life-changing messages that came from the one and only Pastor Shawn Broadnax. He really needs no introduction, but were I on the spot to think of something to say about him, for those of you who met him in this capacity of the grace on his life, you know him as a teacher and a preacher, and he is that unparalleled. In a former season of his life, he made quite the name for himself as a Christian hip-hop artist. And I don't have that grace. Why? Because when you are rapping, I have discovered the lyrics have to be precisely timed. Because if the lyrics are out of sync with the beat, it throws off the entire song. And I found out that the secret to his acuity in teaching is his prowess in lyricism. He knows how to punctually time what he needs to say, so then that it is in sync with what God is doing and the rhythm that is in the spirit. And so today I want you to come into syncopation with the metronome of the man of God, who is the one and the only Pastor Shawn Jeremiah Broadnax. Come on, let's stand all over the building and receive him with a hand clap of praise.
Y'all gotta hold up for a second because it take a little setup. Take a little setup. TRC, you are that. But you are one in a million. Yeah. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that because I'm here, or I don't say that because I'm standing here, or that I serve this church. But I say it because I work overwhelmingly in church. My entire business is based in church. And so I get to see them all. I get to see the apostolics. I get to see the Church of God in Christ. I get to see the Pentecostals. I get to see I don't know, it's a lot of different ones. Oh, man. But regardless of the denomination, there is no church quite like the Riff-Raff. And I have been, I would say blessed, I don't know if that's the right word. I have been charged to speak at a few different churches this year. And it's such a interesting thing to go to different places, and I enjoy going to different places. I called Pastor one day, and I was like, I'm really coming into it. It took me 2 years, but I'm really coming into embracing the role, and I like ministering at TRC the most because I go here, and you go to different places and you say what the Lord said, and then you leave, and you never know how it actually affected the people that were at that different place. But here you get to see that, man, you prayed and You prayed for these people, and you sought the Lord for these people, and you can see the Lord move in their lives, and that is the rewarding part about being any title of pastor. It's to see what the Lord is doing when you are being obedient to him and see what he's doing in his sheep. And so I love TRC. TRC, give yourselves a hand. Speaking of love, also while you're sitting here, just give some honor. Oh, hold on, I didn't say the word. Protocol having already been established. I don't even know why we say that, but it's a part of the protocol that's been established. Protocol having already been established, I want to give honor and reverence and respect to our pastor. I know these days respect is a hard word in 2023. They don't like that word, respect. But I respect the man of God for his obedience to the Lord. And although having been described as a prolific preacher, and one of the most prolific of his generation, not only my opinion and other people's opinion, if you never preached another day, you are our greatest pastor. If we never heard another sermon, I am still proud that you are a pastor, because before the river, you pastored me. Before you was preaching sermons every week, you were a pastor. And I thank you for that. Somebody give some honor and some reverence and some respect to the co-pastor of this house. To the first lady of this house. And the best person to ever title a sermon. Everything she titles, you'd be like, ooh! The God wound. Ooh, what's this about to happen? The best person to ever title a sermon. Everyone is a book, a dramatic movie. But to the most important woman to me, They say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. If anybody has ever said that to you, take your phone out right now and block them, because they are a liar. They are a liar. The way to a man's heart is through his vision, is through his purpose. And if you can tap into what God has for him, if you could tap into what God has for him. See, I have been in a lot of relationships. I have been married prior to this, but not a single person had the capability to tap into what God had for him. So I honor my wife. Yeah, I honor my wife today, excuse me. Okay, I'm gonna ask y'all to do something really, really strange today. It's not really strange, it's just strange to be asked to do it here. I want you to pull out, that's gonna never happen. I want you to pull out, if you're old school, pull out your notepad. If you're from this generation, pull out your, stay standing up. Don't do that. Don't do that. We not ready. If you're from this new school, get out your iPhones, your smartphones, and if you're still unenlightened, your Android. I kid, Android users, I kid. Get them out because we're about to do something crazy. Something very, very crazy. We are about to take notes. I know they ain't do that in 2023 no more. We don't do it. If you need your social media fix, just pull it out, go to Facebook, go to the River Church page, find a live, share it, and put this in the caption: in church for the next hour, leave me alone. Then shut the app down. I doubt it. All right, turn with me into your Bible. To a familiar passage. Funny, because I dislike coming from familiar passages because people think they know everything. To a familiar passage, Jeremiah 29 and 11. Jeremiah 29 and 11. The fact that you have said this verse both Wednesday and last Sunday stressed me out. For I know the plans I have for you. I'm in the NIV, by the way, so it might be different than you guys. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all of your heart. Today I pray you would follow me on a journey. A journey that I hope would change your life and change your perspective. A journey I hope that will last past this service and embed itself into your very DNA. Follow me as I present to you a sermon titled, The Way of the Exile. The Way of the Exile. The Way of the Exile. You know, you guys can have a seat. I have to admit that what I have today is heavy. And it's the type of heavy that made me question whether or not I should be the one who delivers it. In 2023, it seems like we are plagued by identity. In every corner, they want to know who you identify with. In general, identity is a set of characteristics that allow you to be definitively and uniquely recognizable. But we live in a world obsessed with identity. We need to identify people by things like race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion, or political beliefs. We need these man-made attributes, these man-made constructs to help us make sense of the world. And a significant truth is that as humans, we need these constructs to help us feel as if we belong. We need these constructs so we can have some semblance of home. And as humanity progresses, the constructs that we identify ourselves with begin to be amended. For instance, they used to ask you on the census, are you white or black? But over time, the racial construct had to be amended. Why? Because a growing amount of people could not find a home in white or black. Now, if you look at the census, it asks you, are you white? Are you black? Are you American Indian, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, or other Pacific Islander? Because the racial construct had to be amended so that the greater population could find identity, so that they could find a home. In 2023, we're beginning to see the construct of gender be amended before our very eyes. And while I know this is a controversial topic, this is not me making a political statement one way or another. And if you have strong feelings about this, that's a conversation for another day and another time, and quite frankly, another person, not me. But in humanity's progression, there is a growing number of people who don't find home with the choice of that identity construct. They're searching for a place to belong, and because we're so acclimated to the construct, we're so wired into the construct, we could easily call them crazy, demonic, emotionally unstable, or mentally challenged. Or you could just say that they deserve to belong somewhere also. That part's up to you. You know, for most of us, if you remove the attributes of identity constructs away from us, we actually have no understanding whatsoever of who we are. Because we have defined ourselves mostly by man-made constructs. We have defined ourselves by our constructs. And through the confusion of these human constructs, these man-made identities, and how we understand God's consistently function, we can today attempt to extrapolate from the text how God planned works for us all. So, if you want to know how the plan of God works, the best place to start is by reading the book of Jeremiah. If you want to unlock the secrets, the code to the will of God, you should study closer the prophet Jeremiah. It is in Jeremiah 1 that God said, I knew you before you were born in your mother's womb. I knew you before you were conscious of you. I knew you before your parents named you. I knew you before the experiences of your life shaped you into the person you think you know. I knew you. I knew you before you identified with your culture. I knew you before you identified as your skin color. I knew you before you identified as who you think you are. I knew you. The book of Jeremiah makes it abundantly clear that the person you are searching for when you're on your inevitable quest to find your true and authentic self is the exact person God already knew before you came into consciousness of your own existence. The person you are searching for is the person God already knew. Therefore, the following has to be true, that you actually have no idea of who you are unless you seek him. And it's only in your seeking of him that you will ever have a chance of understanding you. See, you will never fully understand who you are if you're always looking for a man-made construct to determine your identity. Because you will never quite fit in and the goalposts will always move. See, we could be black, and someone say, wait a minute, you never seen Boys in the Hood? You saying you never seen The Color Purple? You never seen Coming to America? I'm going to need your black card immediately. because the goalpost will always move. What kind of man don't know how to fix stuff around the house? What kind of man don't know how to cut grass? What kind of man don't take out the trash? What kind of man are you anyway? That is the construct. What kind of woman wants to play football? What do you mean she don't like dresses and hair and makeup? What kind of woman doesn't cook and clean? That's why you ain't got no man. What kind of woman are you anyway? Therein you will find yourself walking through life consistently looking for a home. As soon as you think you found one, they change the goalposts. A mere 15 years ago, the dating process never included getting passports and flying to other countries for dates. These days, he ain't a worthy man if he ain't whisked you away for excursions in paradise. The goalpost consistently changes. As we read the Bible, it is really, really important that we understand. We have some, those of us who read it, we have some understanding of the intended audience of any particular book you're reading. Knowing this will help you extrapolate the intended truth and not the conclusions that your constructs may have been predetermined for you. See, a lot of times we're just raping the Bible, using it to justify our behaviors instead of finding ourselves in the Word. What most people don't understand in the Bible, is that from the end of 2 Kings all the way to the resurrection of Jesus, the people of Israel lived in what we call exile. Israel was conquered by Babylon. They were taken from their homes. They were moved out of their lands. Their leaders were killed. They were forced into new customs. They were forced into a new structure of government. They were forced into a new culture. Their clothing had to change. The foods they were accustomed to eating had to change. They were removed from everything they know. They were stripped of their identity. See, the Hebrew boy Daniel, where did he even come from? He was in Jerusalem when they were exiled into Babylon. In the book of Daniel, King Nebuchadnezzar, he was a Babylonian king. In the book of Esther, Queen Esther was a Jewish girl that became the queen of Persia. Now, you might ask yourself, and if you're not going to ask yourself, I'm going to ask for you, how did a Jewish girl make it to be queen of Persia? I'm so glad you asked, because after Babylon conquered Israel, the Jewish people had to live in Babylonian rule. Then Persia conquered Babylon. And guess what had to happen? The Jewish people, here we go again, I got to change everything. Again. But, we're feeling okay about Persia because the Persians are nice to us, and some of our culture is coming back. We got ourselves a Jewish queen, and we're gaining some political power under the Persians. Our identity coming back. Everything's looking like it's on the up and up. But then guess what? It's not over. Because just when you thought you were coming back, the Persians get conquered by Greece. And just to bring you a point, when Jesus was born, of the 12 tribes of Israel, there were only 2 tribes left. And all the other tribes of Israel that existed when they counted soldiers in numbers, when Samuel appointed Saul in 1 Samuel, when David came and took his kingship in 2 Samuel, when Solomon rebuilt the temple, by the time Jesus was born, of the 12 tribes, 10 of the 12 had been decimated over the years. They had been conquered, wiped off the face of the planet. So there were only two tribes left, the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin. And even in that, the two tribes didn't live under their own governmental order. They didn't live on their own land. If you can remember, Jesus was born under Roman rule. Y'all remember Caesar who tried to kill Jesus even before he knew who Jesus was? They were still in exile. 14 generations, 470 years later, and they still had yet to secure a home. They had no structure, no government, no kingdom in the way it was in Samuel or even Kings or Chronicles. They lived in exile. And I said, as I'm studying for this, I said, God, these are your people. These are the conduit in which you bring salvation to the human race. How are you going to do them like that? God showed me something. What if tomorrow the U.S. was conquered by Mexico? Everything would change. You will wake up in the morning and everything you had in your bank account would be invalid because the U.S. money was no longer worth anything. Everything you thought would have changed. You've lost everything. You've lost everything you had, everything you thought you were going to become, every dream you ever had. Your diploma is invalid. Your degree is useless. Your career has been deleted. Your money is worthless. You thought that you were a strong black man or a strong black woman, except the definition of black is different in Mexico than it is in America, so you no longer qualify as that. You have completely lost your identity. You no longer have an idea of who you are. And then in that, while you're sitting here, and God says to you, I'm going to use you as the conduit that will bring salvation to the nations. And you say to God, see about that. We have lost everything. We have nothing anymore. We can't conquer a middle school, much less the nations. What happens when God tells you to do a thing that doesn't agree with the identity you thought of yourself? What happens when God calls you to a thing that does not agree with the identity you thought of yourself? God calls you to be a millionaire, but I have never been anything but poor, so I have no template for a millionaire. I have no understanding of what it means to be a millionaire. My identity is wrapped in poverty. Or we can think about Moses, and I called you to go to Pharaoh and tell him, let my people go. And God, see, about that, you do know I ain't connected like that, right? You know, I don't even really talk right, you know? Or Gideon, I called you to lead this army. About that, that ain't really what I do, God. I'd rather run, hide, hang in the background. It's not really my thing to be a warrior. Or could be Beethoven. I called you to write this fifth. Ooh, God, about that. You do know I'm deaf, right? Because my thought of my identity is completely wrapped in my experiences. Because my thought of my identity is completely wrapped in my experience. God had to strip Israel of their identity before they could ever become the conduit of salvation to humanity. God had to strip Israel of its identity before it could ever become the conduit of salvation to humanity. Because getting you the biggest army is not how I'm going to bring salvation to humanity. Helping you take down your enemies, helping you get rid of your foes, shutting the mouth of your haters does not help me get closer into communion with humanity. I've got to take away everything you think is important. I got to take it from you and give you some instructions that you are not rightly going to like to hear because it goes against everything you thought in your humanity. Run me Jeremiah 29 and 4. This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, said to those I carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Let me read that again. This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says to those I carried from Jerusalem into exile from Babylon. I took you into exile. It wasn't because Babylon was stronger. It wasn't because you were weak. It wasn't because you had any sin worse than other people. It was because of purpose. I took you into exile. It was because of purpose. Jeremiah 29 and 5. Jeremiah's set of instructions. Build houses and settle down. Plant gardens and eat what they produce. Marry sons and have daughters. Find wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage so that they too may have sons and daughters. Increase in number. Do not decrease. What was the prophet saying to the people of Israel? He was saying, settle down. We're going to be here for a while. Settle down. We're going to be here for a while. I'm sure they were like, what? What? I was happier where I was. I was happier where I was. I was good where I was. I was getting money where I was. I was okay where I was. What is this? And if that wasn't enough, Jeremiah 29 and 7. Also, seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I carried you into exile. Seek the peace and prosperity of the city in which I carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you prosper. So you're saying, not only do I gotta settle here, I have to seek the peace and prosperity of this land with these people who conquered everything I know. I gotta make peace of this place when we lost peace in our own place. When I was exiled, I was where I am is now just, where I was is now just a memory. I'm ruminating on the good times before the exile. I'm remembering how it felt before the exile. I remember just living lovely and free before the exile. Then he said in verse 11, for I know the plan I have for you. He said, I know. He ain't never say he was going to tell me. He said, for I know the plan I have for you. But for the purpose of the plan, I've got to put you in place. For the purpose of the plan, I've got to put you in place. He was not talking to people who were on top. He was not talking to people who had power. He was not talking to people who had money. He was not talking to people who had an army. He was not talking to people who had influence. He was speaking to people who no longer knew who they were. He was talking to people who didn't feel like they belonged here. He was talking to people who were trying to find their home. He was talking to people who were searching to find their place. Talking to people that were displaced. They were having an internal battle because their entire identity as they knew it had been lost. So again, I ask, what happens when God calls you to a thing that does not agree with the identity you had for yourself? He called you to the south and you identify as a northerner. He called you to the suburbs and you identify as ghetto. He called you to the streets and you identify as church. He called you in the ministry and you're like, Lord, I don't identify as religious. I'm just spiritual. The Lord is saying, sometimes I got to clear out who you thought you were so I can impart who you actually are. Sometimes I got to clear out who you thought you were so I can impart who you actually are. I got to clear out everything they called you. I got to clear out everything they said about you. I got to clear out everything they named you. I have to clear out the identity that you picked up when you got here and replace it with the identity of who you were before you were conscious of your own existence. There is a meaning behind your experiences. But the meaning behind your experiences was never to give you identity. The meaning behind your experiences was always to equip you for purpose. The meaning behind your experiences was always to equip you for purpose. See, God imparts in you the grace to handle an assignment, but he's got to build in you the stamina to handle a season. God imparts the grace in you to handle the assignment, but he's got to build in you the stamina to handle the season. See, oh my God, see, you could be the best wide receiver in the NFL. Play for the Miami Dolphins. Just got drafted. Best of the best. But see, football season is in the winter, and in the winter it's 80 degrees in Miami, but your assignment is to go play for the Detroit Lions, and Detroit is 10 below, and if you're not prepped to play in a different season, it will be the season that takes you out, not the assignment itself. If you're not prepped for the season, it'll be the season that take you out, not the assignment. You were prepared for the assignment because you didn't have to earn the grace. You were prepared for the assignment because you never had to earn the grace. It's the season you got to build the stamina for. See, God gives you grace for these assignments, but your experiences will prep you for the season. But you got to be wise enough not to confuse your experiences with your identity. But you got to be wise enough not to confuse your experiences with your identity. You are not a rape victim. That's your experiences, but that's not your identity. Because if I function in the identity of a rape victim, then I will forever be constrained by the trauma of my experience. You are not a criminal. That may be your experience, but it's not your identity. Why? Because if I wrap myself in the identity of a criminal, I will forever be constrained by the mistakes of my history. You are not a failure. You may experience failure, but that's not your identity. Because if you identify as a failure, you will forever be strained, you will ever be constrained by the pain of your process. I am not the sum of my experiences. For I know the plans I have for you. For I know the plans I have for you. Experiences can make you feel alone. Experiences can be a very lonely place. Defeat can be damaging. Who you are will only be found when you decide to drop their identities and come into God's. Because there is something that God is trying to do in your life that will affect the trajectory of the entire world. But it's so big, it's so much of a God calling that it cannot share space with a man-made identity. The constructs that you have confined yourself with cannot hold who you are when you come into the knowledge of the person that God created. God created you for purpose, and purpose that is bigger than the construct could ever accommodate. See, the way of the exile is to lose yourself, lose your identity, and come into His. See, those who die live. Jesus was not talking about the afterlife. This is the spiritual univocality of the text. If you lose who you are, you come into who you are. If you lose who you are, you come in to who you are. that does not mean he's going to make you super spiritual. That does not mean you're going to be walking around in the third heaven all day and all night. That means he's going to bring you into the knowledge of you. A you don't even know. A you ain't never met. That is the way of the exile. Everybody slip your hands up. On your feet, slip your hands up. I know the Lord is bringing us into a new time. A time that we're going to be working our grace. A season that we're going to be moving into new assignments. And there is a people God is about to use cross-culturally. There is a people God is about to use across constructs. There's a people God is about to use across socio-economic barriers. Think it not strange that you're part of TRC, and the mantra here is a safe space for any demographic. And like he did for the Israelites, he is calling you to a multiplicity of demographics. He is calling you beyond what you have seen. For God did not ask your permission for where he called you to. But your soul will be satisfied where you land. He did not ask for your permission for where he called you to. But your soul will be satisfied where you land. Today, there has been the burden of God has been here from the time we walked into the door, from the time we turned the lights out in the on in the sanctuary. The Lord has been in this place. And if you feel the burden of God on you today, I invite you to come and kneel on this altar. If you feel the weight of heaven, if you feel the burden of the Lord calling you today, I invite you to come to this altar and kneel. To let go of who you thought you were. To let go of who you have become acclimated into. And no, we're not coming for a prophecy. We come into this altar to sacrifice the person you thought you were going to be. We're coming to this altar to sacrifice the person you thought you knew. In this moment, I want you to lift your voices right now and begin to tell God that I release myself to you, God. In this moment, I want you to raise your voice right now and let go of the person you thought you were. Let go of the person you thought you knew. Let go of the person that God wants to use. voices in this place. Lift your voices in this place. Lift your voices in this place. God, I'm letting it go. I'm letting go everything that was me before, Father God. Father, we love you. Father, we adore you. Father, you are worthy. You are worth the sacrifice. You are worth the sacrifice. Pastor, there was a conversation that we had several weeks ago. I can't remember when. We have a lot of conversations. And I said, I can't say to you what I would love to say in this conversation because the Lord gave it to me and he told me I had to say it publicly. And I said, so when you get it, just insert it here. The Lord told me several weeks ago, prior to you ever giving me this assignment, he told me that there is a revival coming to the nations. And those who are available will be used. Not those that have titles, not those who are acclimated with church, but those who are available for him will be used. And the Lord told me to tell you that he has called you, Pastor, to lead a generation into an impending revival. A generation troubled by identity, a generation fighting to figure out who they are. You have been constrained by your experiences. You have been constrained by your culture. But this is bigger than your experiences. And that's why you're in exile. The people of Israel did not understand what God was doing for them. They thought when they were told that they were going to get a king, they thought that the king they were going to get would resemble the kings that they had. They thought what God was promising them was similar to what they have seen. The reason why the Israelites, through that nearly 500 years, were so oppressed It was because they believed that they were getting a king, and the nations that they were in exile to thought that a king was going to rise and he was going to be like the treacherous David that they knew of. And they thought that God was going to conquer them because this is what they understood. This is what they understood. But what God was doing for Israel, no one had experience. No one had foreknowledge. No one knew what was coming. And the Lord told me to get in front of this on the live stream to tell you that you are coming into a place, you are coming into a season that you don't understand and that no one you can talk to understands. For God is going to use you to lead a generation in a way that we haven't seen for 100 years. Lead a generation into revival. Somebody give God some praise in here. Father God, we thank you. Father God, we just honor your name.
Come on, let's clap our hands for Pastor Shawn Broadnax and the word.